one of the things we don't often sit down and speak about CS, really, do we? We don't really speak about it.
No, we typically talk about The Office.
Yeah, exactly.
Or MasterChef.
Yeah, or something a bit more exciting. But I think this is the one time that we get to talk about CS and record it, and people get to listen to a conversation this is going to be very unpredictable. So we don't know what's going to happen here, do we?
No.
No. So, God, that's made things more scary than it should. Right. So, listen, I thought of you when, and that's also not a good intro. I thought of you when I read this on LinkedIn the other day, this statistic, which said 60% of women enter customer success, but only 30% make it to leadership positions. And later on in the LinkedIn profile, it says, where do these talented women go? What barriers are they facing? Who's telling their success stories? And why aren't there more role models? And it made me think of you because I know more about you from the other elements of your life. But I think that, I remember when you weren't in leadership, and I remember like your journey there. So tell us a little bit about that, and tell us how you feel about that post, because it made me feel a bit sad that wasn't more of a thing.
Yeah, that is surprising. That's quite a surprising statistic, because I feel like I do know a lot of female leaders in customer success, but I guess my initial thought about that is I don't think that is necessarily a customer success specific issue. I think that's a leadership specific issue in general, and it probably, the statistic, if you look at women with families, is even less. I think there's been a huge shift, obviously, after COVID, with work typically just being more flexible in terms of helping people manage their lives around work. But also, fundamentally, it's like having the support and the opportunities to like carve your way into a leadership role, and having the opportunities to do it, because I think I found, at least, that it's the first role, it's the first like team lead role or manager role, and then you're off. Like once you're managing people, or like you've moved into a leadership role in terms of team lead or team management, then this whole other world of management and leadership opens up to you. But I personally found that initial step into sort of like people leadership the hardest, and I had felt for a long time before I was kind of sort of promoted to the manager role. I felt for a long time that I was capable of doing that, but like the opportunity just hadn't sort of shown itself.
And what things surprised you? Let me rephrase that. What things surprised you? I don't know why I'm saying things, but what things surprised you? And in terms of, I remember you saying to me, actually, I know I'll be a great team leader, and I knew you would be. But the problem is you don't quite know what hand you're going to be dealt once you're dealt it. You know what I mean? And I feel that all the time. But were there anything that made you think, okay, gosh, this is a lot harder than I expected?
People.
Like
just like the fact that you the people side of the people management, not necessarily like the output of the work, but the personalities,
for
absolutely. Sure. I found challenging. I think it helped. It really helped me that not long after I became a manager, I had to manage someone out of the business through their performance. They weren't performing. I had not been a manager for very long at all. It was literally like 6 weeks when I kind of had to go through that process. And at the time it was awful. Like, it was really, really hard because I didn't really feel like I knew what I was doing. But in hindsight, it made me like better for it. And also it made me realize quite early on in my management career and people leadership that there is kind of like a barrier now between sort of yourself and your team, and that doesn't mean that you can't be like empathetic and fun and get on with them really well, but it does mean that you always have the possibility that you're going to have to step in if something's not going right. So I think it taught me that, and it taught me that like the idea of I'd always been quite well liked amongst peers and in roles that I had, and I had to kind of get over I want everyone to like me.
I find it interesting that you kind of have to sort of get to a position where you've got to be really comfortable playing both a villain and a hero at the same time at different points. And to say that you don't take that home and think about it is extremely naive, because you kind of do. And this isn't a generalization, but I just think that there are certain people, certainly myself, and I think you're in the same boat, is that I wish I didn't care what people think, but unfortunately I actually do. Like, I really do. And that makes you that, and some say that's a weakness. I don't think it's a weakness, because what it does is it opens out to it's basically, IQ of just, emotional IQ, which is totally lacking in the business world. Like, there's what you've seen, and then I've seen what you've seen, plus an exacerbated version, and then I just keep thinking, wow, I've been misreading this whole thing. So when you and I have worked with certain people and we've kind of labelled them as dickheads, actually, when you look on the face of it, it might be more about their style, and like you say, they're just people who are dickheads in the real world, and so it just translates into work. You don't ever say to someone, you normally say, well, I like the person, I'm not keen on them at work, but it's not normally the other way around. You don't go, I like their work, but outside of work, no, not my sort of person. You rarely hear that.
Yeah, I guess you wouldn't say you might not like working with someone, but I definitely think that you can, and I feel like I've learned this over the last few years, that you can definitely you can respect someone's like impact on a business whilst also not really liking them as a person or seeing eye to eye to them. And I think that is the same in terms of, I have accepted the fact that there will be people that might not like me as a person, as an individual, and they're wrong, but but they can still appreciate the fact that, like, the impact that I've had within a particular business and whatever I've done as a leader, or my team has done, is kind of undisputable. So I've definitely had to kind of, that's been a long challenge and sort of journey to get through, from that kind of like wanting everyone to like you, from higher up leadership to your team, to sort of accepting that you just really want to be sort of respected for the work that you do, and liking doesn't get into it as much, insofar as you can't rely on people liking you. I mean, I do think teams, I do feel strongly that teams work better together when fundamentally the team members get on as people, because ultimately, like, what, like, our work selves and our home selves are the same person. And I fully disagree with the idea that you're like, there's a work version and a home version. Like, you're just, no, you're just a person, and you're cracking on, and you're spending a lot of time with these people. So I think I do think it helps for sure, especially in a team, when people get on a personal level. But I think for me, at least, especially as a leader, you have to accept that that's not necessarily always going to be the case.
Yeah, I get it. And when you went into the leadership position, I know there's going to be lots of probably hundreds of millions of CSMs listening to this. What is the what would you say to them? I know this is a difficult question, but what would you say to them they should be doing if they wanted to get themselves into a leadership position? There is experts that give advice around this all the time, but from your perspective, having made that transition, what would you say it is?
Oh, that's a really tricky one, because I'm thinking of things that I think of for CSMs more generally, but from a leadership perspective, I think a good marker I see of a potential leader in the future is someone that can quite naturally tie their like day-to-day activity with business outcomes. So someone that isn't just like, these are my customers and this is what I'm doing, and this customer wants this and this customer wants this, and like they're not just caught up in the day-to-day, but they can see the bigger picture of, I've got to input all this stuff on, whatever CS platform that I'm doing, and I need to make sure my contacts are updated, and they might do things that they don't like doing, but I'm putting together another deck. Oh, this is really annoying. But actually, the people that can understand or like take a step back and realize the impact of the minutiae in terms of like the day-to-day actions and how that makes a broader impact in terms of the business. I feel like that's a key sign.
I totally agree, and I saw that in you very early on, in that I know that you effectively kind of said, you were putting yourself in the ring, almost in the lion's den, as it were, to say, I'm gonna own this, and I'm gonna make it something that impacts the business in a positive way, and then obviously tying it to something that is kind of high level, like board level. The really frustrating thing I witness all the time is, if you were to sit in front of a pool of CSMs at an event, or even support teams, and you say to them, it's really important you understand the financials of the company, but also what are the initiatives, so you can understand why you're doing it. And a majority of them will actually turn around and be so in the weeds of what they're doing in the day-to-day, they won't think to do that because they're just not interested or don't really see the value in it. It's really sad that that happens, because what happens is, when it comes to pay rise time, that's what they'll look at. When it comes to promotion time, that's what they look at. And even if you put it in layman's terms, and I have done this not so long ago, I said, understand your outcome that affects the business, and you will get money and promotion, and you will get, you'll be in the spotlight. And a lot of people go, you know what? No, I'm too busy for that, all that. I'm like, okay, but what are you doing with your career? Do you want to stay here, or are you happy as you are? Maybe you are happy as you are. It's very difficult to put it any other way other than, just start thinking early about putting things strategically. So, it's something that I think just is overlooked quite a lot.
Yeah, it is. I think it was, for me, definitely, it was quite a long time ago now that a boss at the time had said to me, you know, I think I sent them, they were a previous boss, but I sent them like my new CV, and they were like, this is all great, but this is just what you do and not like the outcome of what you've done. And that for me was like a proper light bulb moment to be like, oh yeah, why am I just, what I'm doing is kind of irrelevant if I don't say what the outcome is of what I'm doing. So that's definitely something that I feel like incredibly passionate about from a kind of management perspective, in like even my most junior people on the team that I've ever spoke about, I've always said, you know, at any review time, whenever you're saying about something that you've done, don't just say what you've done, like you have to say the outcome, because people care about the outcome first. If anything, say the outcome and then say how you got to the outcome, then back it up with like the steps that got you there. But I think that's a kind of a key marker of someone that is interested and has the ability to move into a leadership role. And I do massively agree with you that I think there are a lot of people that go, oh no, I'm too busy doing the things. And then that's when you kind of go, oh, okay, then you can be the kind of best CSM in the world and have no, you know, you could do all the things and they're driving good outcomes, whether or not you see that, but like they are. But if you're not willing to like promote the outcomes that you're generating, then I don't think a leadership role is necessarily for you, because ultimately when you get into a leadership role, you're doing less of the things yourself. So it's all about outcomes.
It's almost like you have to be like a mini marketer in your own for your own profile, isn't it? Like I certainly didn't expect to have to do so much sales, and now like pretty much everything I do, everything I touch is like 80 to 90% sales, but also I'm just doing this constant sort of I'm not, I don't want to insult you here, so I'm trying to think of your age in terms of, do you remember the profiles you had after GCSE? They're like a brown book. Did you have that?
Oh yeah, certificate of achievement.
That's it.
Yeah,
like a little portfolio. So I used to put my GCSEs were in it, but also photos of me like winning table tennis tournaments because I was struggling basically. And swimming
that's quite impressive, because
get it all in there.
Hard.
Swimming certificates. But later on, I started to get other things in there, like a few diplomas and stuff. And I think I think that should be brought back. Like, I think LinkedIn, fine. I think a tangible little portfolio that says this is the value I added and this is what I did. Make it a lovely little thing, maybe leather bound or something with a quill. I don't know.
The quill.
And then and just sort of
handwritten by a monk.
Get a monk to write it. Get the monk to sign it. And I just think something that is very impressive just in its overall presentation, which is why the mini marketer thing I think is key that everyone has. Like when you look online and look on LinkedIn, genuinely, how do you feel about some of the other people in CS? Do you look at it and go, oh, same old bullshit? Or do you look at someone and go, they're marketing it really well?
Yeah, both of those things. I 100% see so much of it, and I feel like the volume of AI generated
it's
CS LinkedIn posts is getting like unwieldy, I would say. But I do think there are certain people where I've read it and been like, oh, I really you've hit the nail on the head. I feel like there is a lot of absolute waffle, just business speak that's ultimately saying, when you spend time with customers, that's good. you know,
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
sort of like
yeah.
a really long thing about like how, you know, you've been, I don't know, brainstorming ways to like improve customer sentiment, and like the outcome that they've come to after, you know, like basically a whole page of a LinkedIn post is like, so we just decided to like go and see our customers on a roadshow or something, and it's just like, what? Like, there's no I think especially with AI now, I think there is a very easy way to make something incredibly like day-to-day and mundane sound jazzy just by like lobbing in loads of big words that actually, if you read out loud like a story, just wouldn't make sense. It would also be a very boring story.
This is where, you know, that whole thing of know your audience comes in. Like over in my sort of as time has gone on with all this, and I felt like I can look at some of that stuff and I just pick something out and go, oh, that's interesting, like the thing I mentioned at the bottom. And then I can also pick something out and go, okay, I can pull that out, and that's an interesting thing to think about or to talk about. I'm no longer triggered by any of it. However, what I have found is, going back to what we said about being likable and like having the right team and so on, is I feel like on LinkedIn, everybody has stopped being relatable and started being in this whole, almost following a track. It's almost like they've had training on how to be on LinkedIn. And then there's no like, you know, this is why I love this podcast, but also love a lot of people that I work with. They just straight talking, this is how I see it. And then they also bring personal human elements into it as well. What deeply frustrates me is that a lot of these big companies bring in like neuroscientists and experts in human behavior. You know, they bring in some incredible smart HR people, and they just ignore everything they say because it just goes over their head, and they go, well, yeah, what, you know, okay, you sort that out. And I just think you have no idea how important that is, but you're just going to let it ride. I wish, and one day it will come out, I wish that there was literally a direct relation to that and the cost of not listening to that stuff. It's just, it's very hard to track. I mean, or maybe it's turnover or staff or whatever. But I think that comes through, and it shines through like in everything we hear and read about. But I mean, we've known each other a long time, but when we first got to know each other, and I was talking to you about CS, and you're probably thinking, this guy's like brainwashed. Did you like, what were your, because you were in CS, but obviously in the lawtech space, but when I came along, what did you change about what you were doing in the CS world? Or did you just think, I've got a boss?
Wow, that's a really good question, and it's really interesting actually, because I think when throughout like my career I had been in and around legal, and still am, like around law firms, around lawyers, around legal tech specifically, and had fallen into a variety of different jobs and account management and implementation and customer success, all sort of similar roles. But I hadn't really thought until you joined, until we met, I hadn't really thought of like customer success as a thing in itself. Like I'd always thought of myself as being like, I sort of, I guess I put more on the sort of industry that I was in rather than like the role or like profession that I did within that industry. And I think that opened up a massive gateway for me, because actually it made me realize that what I really enjoy isn't like the industry is kind of second to like the role that you're doing and the role that you're doing, and kind of the work that I've done with going to events and with other CS professionals that made me realize that like regardless of your business, if it's SaaS, if it's not SaaS, like everyone in CS has very similar challenges, and that I think has been incredible to realize that there's like a much broader world outside, and it's not just based on like the type of businesses that you're dealing with. It's your kind of my role. I think what it made me realize was my role wasn't dictated by the customers I was dealing with. My role was fundamentally around like what's the best thing to do to like drive revenue and maintain like customers sentiment and also retention, and grow those accounts. Whereas I feel like that was the main thing that really changed for me when we started working together. I started seeing the idea of these customers aren't I mean obviously every customer is special, but the idea that customer success is a thing that can be, there are key areas that you need to ensure that you're doing well, regardless of the segment that you're in, regardless of the customer base that you have. And I think that was really exciting, and also it just became a much broader thing where I did history at university and I've always been quite obsessed with history, and I think what I quite like about customer success is that like in history, different historians have different views of like what's important and what isn't important in a particular thing. And I feel like that's exactly what it's like in CS. Some people are like MPS and other people are like no.
Very true.
And they have their arguments to back it up, and that sort of reminds me of kind of like my degree, and everyone having different opinions.
It's an exciting place to be, isn't it? Because it's not like where also it's kind of a little bit fragile in that you don't know how long it's gonna be along for. It's sort of a little bit undetermined by certain areas. It's got all these unknowns and fogginess around it, which actually makes it quite interesting and exciting. But I quickly learned exactly. In fact, you learned sooner than me, but I learned a bit later on about exactly that. Like, actually, I wasn't driven by customers, and when I looked at measurable outcomes, the more and more I look into the data, the more that actually you find that customers don't even know what they want their outcome to be. So I was just learning more and more about people and behavioral stuff, and figuring out actually this is a really interesting job, because it's not something you certainly in the consultancy world, you certainly can't come in and go, this is the best way to do it. You can't do that. The discovery involved, if you're not touching on the human side of the personas of both the team and the audience, you're stuffed. See it all the time. And like I really think that it's just such an interesting place to be. But also I love that it polarizes so much more than you sort of see. I'm in sales forums as well, right? And I look at sales forums and they're so different, because it's all grab and go type stuff. And it's all about, everybody's talking about pipeline at the moment. You just want more pipeline. But it's quite, sales stuff is quite accessible. The CS stuff, it just requires navigation all the time, and conversations. And I think that's what makes it really interesting. I think this is going to close soon, but when it does, we can jump on another one, because we'll do another 15. Anyway, Karen.
I think it'll just carry on, won't it?
I think so. What I'm going to do is extend it. Just extend it. See if that works. Can I extend it? Maybe. Trying. Yes. I've sent an update, so maybe it's going to extend it. Editing people, would you mind cutting this bit out? Thanks. I don't know who I'm talking to, because they're not in my ears. It's just that I know that they'll watch this.
Yeah. Okay.
I also wanted to talk about the fact that in your journey, we've both had children, not together, to clarify. Um, and we've both got daughters, and you, we've both kind of, we've got busy personal lives, but we've also got busy work lives as well. But as has everyone, however, you've had a specific event occur to you, which I know is very sensitive, but you've kindly agreed to talk about it. Which was, you were diagnosed with cancer. Was it last year or the year before?
Yeah, no, it was last year. So it was just about, it was and kind of mid-May last year. So so it was I guess I'll caveat that with I'm fine. I am cancer free. I had stage 2A malignant melanoma, or as a doctor kindly said to me, proper skin cancer. There might be improper skin cancer, but didn't have that. I got the official one, the brand. Proper one.
Yeah, none of this turkey stuff.
Yeah, exactly. None of this sort of entry level skin cancer. No, I went straight in for the big dog. It last year was mad. It was hands down the worst year personally in my life. It was the hardest year I've ever had, but also professionally was probably the best year I've ever had. So it was, I look back on sort of the last 12 months, 13 months-ish now, and think, what? Because it was such a sort of dichotomy of good and bad in different ways. So I was diagnosed last May. I had a mole on my leg. I don't like the sun, really. I'm not a sunbather. Never been in the sunbed. Never had horrendous burns. And I sort of noticed this mole. It had been changing a bit, and it was only when my husband was like, "Yeah, it looks really manky," basically. And he's incredibly chill. So I was like, "Oh God, if he's saying it doesn't look good, I should probably go to the doctor." And honestly, I really did not think anything about it. But I thought, I'm a grown-up. I'm a sensible grown-up person. I'm going to get my mole checked out because that's what sensible grown-up people do. And then it all happened incredibly quickly, all through the NHS. It happened so quick. I had private health insurance, but it all happened so quick that there was no time to even try and go privately. So I would say if anyone has moles, just get them checked out, because I definitely had noticed mine for a while and was like, "Nah, it's fine, whatever." And hadn't done anything. And I think if I had caught it earlier, it wouldn't have been. I wouldn't have had wouldn't have needed as much treatment. So basically, I had surgery, and they removed some lymph nodes, as well as sort of a sort of 2 centimeter sort of diameter circumference around where the mole was. So I've got quite a chunky scar on my leg now. But that was it. I just needed surgery. It hadn't spread. I was incredibly lucky. They were concerned that it might have spread because it was quite deep, but it hadn't. But basically sort of from when I started getting, when I first went to the doctors, that was about April. And then after surgery, and then I had a complication, so I had to have another surgery. Sort of April to September, I didn't, and then I had a holiday in there as well. I didn't work for more than sort of 2 working weeks in a row. So the longest stint I did between April and September last year was 10 working days, essentially. And I hadn't really appreciated that until I was sort of reflecting back on the year and doing my performance review and thinking, "Oh my God, how did I get things done?" Because I was just absent for a lot, the kind of big chunk in the middle of the year. And I think, obviously, it was a horrible, like, work was in some ways actually incredibly helpful because it was a distraction to like what was going on in my life and to my body. But I think it also just made me really, really focused on like what I needed to achieve, because I didn't have like time. I didn't have like the luxury of being able to think about things, because I was constantly waiting for like, when's the next appointment? When do I have to go? What do I need to do? When will I get my surgery? And then obviously then I had complications. So
I guess you've got no capacity for extra anxiety either. So it's not like you can do other things.
Yeah, I feel like I got really, I've always been quite decisive, but I feel like that was like a no-brainer. It was sort of like, this is the decision, let's go kind of thing. I didn't have the ability to be like, oh, maybe we should check with this person or this person, because by the time we might have done that, then I might be off again. So and I think it hands down made me a better leader, and I feel certain that it developed my team. It was like a crash course in them kind of learning to sort of kind of make decisions for themselves.
Step up.
Massively. So I mean, I had a team of quite junior, a mixture of like very quite junior and senior CSMs, but it still is like, the rule is no one can come to me with a problem if they don't have a suggested solution. So that was like the rule. Like when I was off, like when I'm online, don't just come to me and say like, this is the issue, what should I do? Like, because there is no time, you have to come with you've looked at the options, this is what you would recommend and why. Especially for like customer, like so much at my level can be customer escalations, or like how to resolve particular problems either internally or externally, and people want a second opinion. And I feel like definitely prior to this all happening, because I feel like I'm fundamentally a helpful person, I would always be like, oh, I'll do it, or don't worry, I'll do that for you and I'll send it back to you, or like, oh, let me think, and then I would make the decision, or I would do whatever they were asking for. If they were asking for something, I don't know, like to help out, I'm a team player. But it definitely got to a point where I was like, if there is an escalation, or there is a problem, or we need to find a solution, you have to come with a like draft solution. And I think especially for the younger members of the team, that was like, they developed so quickly over such a short period of time, in terms of like trusting their own instincts and trusting themselves and their decision making, that I'm so excited about them taking like through their careers. I mean, they're early 20s, like they've got so much time ahead of them, and I sort of feel like if you're already like confident in your decision making at such a young age, I'm really excited about where they'll go.
I'm so happy that you mentioned all of that, because because the one message that is super clear here is like, as a leader, you have this sort of natural ability to want to step down, but nobody steps up if you keep stepping down to try. Do you know what I mean? And so therefore giving them space to step up is a great thing. But also the other reason I'm really happy you said all that is just because such a personal thing, a lot of adversity in which that I think everybody would deal with it in their own way, but for it to have so many different positive elements to it, i.e. your team gets to step up and develop, you get to deal with it in the way that you want to deal with it, you're not adding more anxiety to your life. You say it was the worst year of your life. I mean, like just good things compound and compound and compound, don't they? And I think that's really like, I felt the takeaway from that. Like I'm aware of some of the people you mentioned, like in their 20s, like how were they, how were they with you as a team, knowing what was going on? Like, were there lines drawn, or how do you approach it? Do you say to them, look, I've got, I'm going through this?
Yeah.
How do you manage the scenario?
I mean, I know how I managed it. So
Yeah.
I don't know what you should do, but I am, as a team, I'm pretty open. Like I was saying, I don't believe that there is like a work me and a life me. Like I am just me.
Yeah.
So I was pretty open with the team as soon as I knew, because one, I knew it would impact them, like just in a very basic, like not being able to do one-to-ones, not being around all the time, maybe being kind of distracted, and also we're a pretty close team. Like I'm almost certain they would have noticed something was up as well. And also just being like, oh, I'm at the doctor's again. It's always a bit of a flag. So I was very upfront. I told the team. I didn't tell a huge number of like broader colleagues. To be honest, I kept it quite like immediate in terms of like my peers at a leadership level and then my immediate kind of team. And I think they were really great. I basically was quite honest in terms of like, to get this, like, you are going to have to make decisions. I might not be here. I trust you. And I've always had, and this isn't cancer specific, this is just much broader, but like you're never ever, I feel like I've always been given space to make mistakes at work and like make my own decisions and not have like everything that I'm deciding being like rubber stamped by like my manager. So I've always said to the team, regardless, and they had to really just like do this, is like, just do what you think is best. And if it turns out that was wrong, like, just don't make that mistake again. Like, as long as you learn from it and you understand the outcome and you understand like how things could have gone or maybe an alternative, like, it's fine. Like no decision that any of us would have made would have like brought the company down. So
no, exactly.
Just sort of like trust yourself to make those decisions, because there are going to be times where like you're not going to be able to ask me, and also I think it really helped pull the team themselves together, because this is the team that they don't all live in the same place, they don't go to the same office every day, they're across different countries. I think that kind of like hive mind, so when people did have questions or like a situation they weren't sure of, rather than just like making a decision, we had a very active teams chat, and that was like the hive mind for everyone to go, oh, I would do this, or you could look here, or questions that they would typically ask me as like their manager, they were going to their peers. And I think that really helped. And actually I was talking to a colleague in a different team that I still work with pretty closely most weeks, obviously kind of later, it was this year, and I sort of mentioned, I don't know how it came up, I mentioned the fact that like I was off for such a long period of time last year and I'd been unwell, and she was like, I had no idea. Like I had no idea. Like your team were just like you, like, so I think giving the team the space to kind of like continue to like push ahead, even when I was sort of in and out, and then also when I was in, really making sure that the time that I was in, I was like incredibly productive.
Making the most out of it, out of that time,
meant that like actually overall it was a good year.
And that would be, for those CSMs with a different leader in a different company, that might be a very normal scenario for the leader to be in and out in that kind of realm. And so that's great for them. But But you, because of the way you are and how you are, and like you say, you're you and not, there's not a work version of you, a normal version of you, which I'm 100% for. I think that's something they all will take with them, like into future roles and careers. And maybe if they want to be leaders, they might take some of that away with them. Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. Before we wrap up, I hate saying wrap up. I can't think of a better way of closing it.
Finish?
Before we wrap up,
End?
finish?
No, finish. I don't like finish. I tend
Finish is not
no,
good, is it?
no.
I'm going to put you on
the call.
Close, yeah. Before we close, do you have any recollection, and are you willing to share? You can't obviously say customer names of the worst ever customer interaction you ever had, because I would like to share mine with you. You've not ever heard this before. I made a note of it, but is there any customer interaction you've had where you thought this is literally the worst, the most craziest, the craziest?
Oh God, there's a few. There's a couple. Yeah, there's some like like really dodgy ones from
it can be dodgy
when I was younger. And some, can I say two?
You can say two, yeah.
Okay, so two for different ones. One when I was younger, and they weren't actually a customer at the time, and then one more recently. So the first one was when I was quite junior, and I was an account manager, so I was trying to sell to these people. I did sort of retention and renewals and account management, but I also did sort of new business. And basically, we like met for a coffee, and then essentially, I can only describe it as I was held hostage in this coffee shop for like 2.5 hours because I felt too awkward and I was too polite to leave, because they were saying about how they didn't like, their office wasn't in London. They'd come into London for the day, and I'd met them for a coffee, and then they were saying how their next meeting wasn't for like, they didn't have to leave until like over 2.5 hours. Like, how much? And I remember just being like, oh, and they were like, oh, you could like hang out, like you could stay if you wanted. And obviously I was sort of like, well, I want to sell some stuff to them, and also I'm, they're a lot more senior than I am, and I don't really know, and they're saying that, so this is obviously like a normal thing. I was like in my early 20s, I had like no idea, and didn't feel confident to be like, oh, like, no, sorry, I've got like things to do. And I was basically just like sat with them, sort of chatting. They were on their laptop, but like just like smashing these coffees, because I was like, I can't leave. Like, I can't leave because I feel too guilty to leave and awkward. And then literally, I like, finally their next meeting was like turned up in this coffee shop or something. I can't remember if they left. And then like I looked at my phone and I had like so many missed calls from my boss, and I like went back to the office, and they were like, where have you been? Like, you have got, like, we've been really worried. Like, you were only going round the corner for this meeting like at 10, and it's now 1. Like, what is going on? And I actually got told off about it, because it was like, that was such a waste of time. And I was like, I know, but like I just didn't know what to do.
So bless you. You don't.
Yeah.
Oh, bless you. I think I would have done the same thing though, because probably back then I would have, but
yeah,
you don't want to. You don't want to black
really
mark, do you? Like,
I didn't want to like offend them, and So that was one, and then the second one was when I got pulled into an escalation, and it wasn't, I mean, it wasn't a great escalation, like there were issues with the product, the customer was very unhappy, but that one was like it's the only time that I've ever been on a call with a customer, or actually a colleague, like anyone, where I had to say, like, if you don't calm down, like, I'm gonna hang up on you. Like, you are being
just
so rude. Like, you are being like, like, I appreciate that, but like, your tone is so, like, you need to calm down, or like, I will have no choice but to like end this call because you are being like quite offensive, and like just you're just being like this isn't productive, essentially. They did calm down, and it was fine. It was fine in the end, but that was the first time where I was like, oh my goodness, like I can't actually get over how rude you're being.
Yeah.
And actually, unlike in that coffee shop where I felt too guilty to leave the coffee shop after 2 hours, I feel like the years of experience were behind me, and I did feel confident enough to be like, actually, we're all humans here. We're all trying our best. Like, how about we just like simmer down?
We're not going to deal with it. Yeah. Yeah, that's tough when that happens, because I think it's hard to. There's some really good coaching in and around how to deal with all of that, but in its essence, at the time, the heat that comes off that customer, you just think you would not treat another human this way, regardless of vendor or partner or anyone. So let's just not do that.
Yeah,
I don't have to be in this area, My one literally only came back to me today. So basically, I'd totally forgotten about this, and I wish I'd still forgotten about it. So basically, this is horrendous. So basically, someone who I used to work with at Oracle messaged me, and we were having a little bit of a laugh about things. And then he said, do you remember when we were on that customer call? And he was talking, I know the customer he was talking about, but I didn't remember the specific call until he said it was the head trauma guy. And I went, head trauma guy? And then I remembered. And what happened was, this guy wanted to call. This is when we were both working at Oracle, and this guy wanted to call in to vent about some product stability issues. And we entered the call. There was 6 of us, 3 from Oracle, 3 from their side, so evenly matched. But what had happened was, he was that angry when he joined the call that he fell off his chair backwards, and it took every fibre in my body to not say, "Oh, have you bought an Oracle chair as well?" Like, just, lighten the mood. But when he got back up on his chair, my friend, who was also at Oracle, pinged me and said, "Oh my God, he's got blood coming down from his head." He had cracked his cranium and blood was coming down his face. But then he continued to rant and complain. My boss, who was also on the call, like, she went off camera, and she told me later that she went off to vomit. Right? She was like, "What the hell?"
Oh God!
Like, she just couldn't believe it. This guy was talking, and there was blood coming down from his head, and it was like a scene from Carrie. And I remember it really well, because the reason I remember it well was because I literally had, at that point in time, we're going back some years, a playbook that I was following, and I was looking through the playbook thing, thinking, there's nothing here for fractured skull
injury.
I didn't know what to do, so I just sort of like carried on with the playbook, and then we exited the call. He was totally fine. I mean, I still cry in the shower sometimes, but he was totally fine. But the one thing, when my friend messaged me about it, he just said, the worst thing about that call, James, was actually your reaction. Like, you are an empathetic, guy. And he said it was like you were cold. You were colder than him, because he was the one ranting, but I was just being very robotic because I didn't know how to deal with it. So, like, what do I do here? Just keep following the playbook. So have you tried turning it off and on again? But yeah. So yeah. Yeah, it's just funny what we get looped into, because we just get tied to our customers, and I think we get tied to certain situations. But every time you're in a new one, it's like when you're a kid, you just get new experiences all the time. Every time you get a new experience, what do you do? There's no playbook, so you have to be on your toes all the time. And I know certainly when you and I were at OM, I was new to legal market. You knew it. I had never expected to have to be on my toes more so than in the legal tech side. Because for me, it was like, oh, this is different. I dealt with public sector, I dealt with hospitality, dealt with all these industries, but law was definitely a different fish. And yeah, I'm grateful to you and the other members of the team to making sure I didn't, step over the line. I might have done a few times, but yeah.
Goodbye.
Anyway, thank you so much for your time, Nat.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Thanks so
thanks
much.
for everything that you've shared. And yeah, maybe we'll get you on again. Maybe we'll do the next one in the studio, but bit of a trek in it. Yeah, we'll do it. Cut. Right, I'll cut it there. Is that all right?
Yeah, it was nice. I like it. I like talking about this stuff.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? It's nice when it's free and it's not like loads of rattled questions. When me and Luke first started doing it, he's got a very good way of methodically going through it, but we've just gone down the avenue of let's make it more conversational, and that's kind of why it's no BS CS type stuff. So right, cool.
Yeah, no, I do like a chat.
What I'll do is now the recording will go to the guys, they'll edit it, and then I will let you know and say, right, are you happy to post? And then you say yes, when, as and when.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And I'll do the introduction in the actual text, because then it's not and here we have Natalie. Look, it's not a game show.
No.
Here we have Natalie from
nowhere at the moment.
Thailand, where? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Thank you, mate. Maybe to go and have some dinner.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was really good fun.
Let's do more. Let's talk about metrics next.
Yeah. Oh, there's a few things I'd like to talk about that are very niche. I'd have a think, but if there's something where you can go, the nicher, the better, I think.
Okay.
Like if there's something where you go, that's not spoken about often. I know one thing that definitely isn't spoken about often is soft skills, CSMs.
Oh, that's interesting because I think my number one, like when I'm hiring, my number one is did the half an hour we spoke just disappear? That's like it. That's like if I can't talk to you easily for half an hour, like you're not the CSM for me, because ultimately that is it.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do think people are more like, can you demo the product? Yeah,
I know. I do. I am seeing a trend in it going into a way where it's kind of more technical. I'll tell you what was so interesting. I did a training course for some CSMs a few weeks ago. There's 20 of them, all in a room. And after the meeting, I went and met their manager, and he said, "Oh, how did it go?" And I said, "It went well." And he said, "You seem not convinced." And I said, "If I'm really honest with you, half of them don't feel like the CSM type." And he went, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, they're not very engaging. Like this is the course I do is extremely. It's not a course where I just sit there and tell you what's what. It's a very interactive, and there's a lot.
You need like a CSM type. Like there is a vibe.
There's definitely a vibe. Yeah, definitely. It's like marketing. Marketing people, they have energy. You know, they have energy. They have, so anyway, mate, thank you. I'll keep you posted.
Cool. I'll keep you posted about
definitely. Yes.
Next steps. Let me know any jobs you hear of.
definitely. So I've got that call on Friday tomorrow. I'll let you know what happens there, and I will also keep my eye out on anything else.
Thanks, mate.
All right, cool, mate. See you later.
Bye.